Hi everybody, this is Dr. Eric with Full Potential Chiropractic, and thank you for joining us for our April installment of our Body Signals workshop, Ending Asthma and Allergies. The body signals we'll be discussing tonight in detail are atopic syndromes. The most common of these syndromes seen in our office are allergies, asthma, and eczema. Now, we've been doing these body signals workshops for the last few months, but we still get a lot of questions in our office about what we mean by body signals. So let's take a second and delve into that. Body signals, a good synonym for them are basically symptoms. And the thing about symptoms is symptoms are your body's way of trying to tell you that you have an issue, but they're a lot like an iceberg, where you see this little bit of iceberg sticking out of the top of the water, but the danger to a ship is really the huge looming mass of ice that's floating below the surface of the water. And that's the perfect analogy for what body signals are, what symptoms are. Your body's way of trying to communicate to you that there's something going on, but they don't necessarily explain what's actually going on. And the underlying purpose of these workshops is to really teach us how to speak body, or basically understand how your body is trying to communicate to you. It's important to recognize that we all exist somewhere on the illness-wellness continuum. And on the far left, you have things like premature death, disability, symptoms, sign, i.e. body signals. And then you have your neutral point. And then you have the more healthy paradigm, your awareness, your education, and growth. And we all fit on this spectrum at some place. And we're always moving on this spectrum, either making decisions that are moving us towards the left or making decisions that are moving us towards the right. And the whole goal of these workshops is to help arm you with the knowledge to move you towards the more healthy side of the spectrum. For today's discussion, we're going to talk a lot about the immune system and how it's integrally and inseparably linked to our nervous system. The purpose of this immune system is to ultimately monitor and protect both our internal and external environment from foreign invaders. So things like bacteria, viruses, pollen, animal dander, things of that nature. So think of your immune system as your internal armed forces. So you think of the armed forces, we have our Navy, we have our Air Force, we have our Army, we have the Marines, all these different branches. And the purpose is to ultimately protect what is important to us so we may live and thrive as we are designed to. And the communication that coordinates this armed forces is your nervous system. Now, how the immune system works is a much more loaded question. And without getting too bogged down in all the details of the chemical and the neurological processes that are involved, basically it's always working behind the scenes, ideally, where any kind of foreign substance to our body, be it a bacteria, a virus, pollen, animal dander, anything, is recognized as foreign, attacked, and eliminated. And I mean, even things like cancer cells. Your body is constantly monitoring its own cells, and there are many stages along the process that it could be recognized that something's not quite right in this cell, and the immune system is designed to target and eliminate these threats to help keep us thriving and functioning as we're designed to. And the great thing is, most of the time, this is going on behind the scenes without us being at all aware of it. If it's working properly, we can be exposed to all kinds of things, and we don't really know that our immune system is actively protecting us from all these potential threats. So we should all take a moment and just recognize that how cool are you, how amazing is your body that it is capable of doing these kind of things without even us consciously devoting thought to achieving this. And this is all coordinated through your nervous system. Although, be it very oversimplified, that is basically how the immune system works. Now, as we transition into how the immune system develops, the last thing I want these next couple slides to be is demoralizing to the people who did not necessarily follow these steps. To talk about how the immune system develops, we have to talk about natural development. We're going to get a little bit graphic here, but I'll try to be as clean as I can. When we're talking about natural development, we're dealing with vaginal birth, which is an amazing, beautiful thing, but also in reality is a very dirty and disgusting thing in the sense of you have blood and mucus and fecal matter and all these things that this baby that is just being exposed to the external environment for the first time in its life. And that's honestly by design, because it's all about exposing these new babies to the normal flora that's present within a healthy, functioning human body for the first time. Then as that new baby starts to feed in a natural world, their first food is mother's breast milk. And breast milk, especially in the earlier stages, is predominantly composed of colostrum, which is a lot of the antibodies that were developed by the mother and passed to the child with the recognition that this child's immune system is not primed and ready to face all the threats of the greater world. And the amazing thing about mother's breast milk is she is constantly modifying her own specific formula based off of what her baby's needs are. And as this child grows and their immune system becomes more developed and mature, they're exposed to all kinds of invaders and normal childhood illnesses like chicken pox or flu viruses and things that are not going to be fatal to the child. And this is all part of the child's developmental experience of not only creating its own immune response and beating these illnesses, but also priming their immune system to be better able to recognize other related viruses or bacteria or invaders that could be potentially harmful to it as it continues to grow and develop. And as children are exposed to these pathogens, they often develop fevers. And children's fevers can get pretty high, and a lot of us have this inclination to want to reduce the child's fever. But what this fever is actually doing is their intelligent nervous system and body is recognizing that it needs to make the child's body an inhospitable host for this invader so its immune system can mount a more efficient defense against it. And then you look at the concept of teething, and what's the first thing a child typically does when you give it anything? It's going to put it in its mouth. And again, this is a pathway into the body of exposing it to potential pathogens and helping its body to develop an appropriate immune response to the external environment that it's going to have to grow and thrive in.
And then we have the unnatural development patterns. C-section. There are times when this is absolutely a necessary thing, but are they necessary in close to 40% of childbirths today? Not really. And what a C-section does is it takes away that first exposure to a lot of the beautiful and disgusting process of exposing this child to these first waves of outside environment as it exits the womb. And today, a lot of parents are formula feeding their children and completely bypassing the natural process of exposing them to the proper antibodies that their mother makes for them as their immune system is developing. And then we run a lot of interference with our body's intelligent processes, be it through medications that reduce fevers, antibiotics, things that rob the child of its immune response to help it develop a robust and mature immune system.
Vaccination. Now, this is a topic we get questions on very frequently in the office, and we could talk extensively about it, but we're going to steer clear of any philosophical debates and focus on vaccination and its sheer consequences of how it affects the nervous system. And at the end of the day, the experts agreed that we're trading our short-term, acute, natural diseases for more long-term chronic issues. Chronic diseases like asthma, allergies. Take chickenpox, for example. When I was growing up, it was just normal, common, accepted that most children are going to get chickenpox. And now that most people are inoculated against chickenpox with the chickenpox vaccine, we're seeing fewer incidents of actual childhood chickenpox, but more incidences of adolescent and adult outbreaks of shingles. Not only are we seeing a shift from natural childhood exposure to diseases and develop of immune system, we're seeing a continual stacking of the vaccine schedule and what we're exposing our children to. Whereas when I was younger, I had less than 20 vaccines in my schedule by the time I was in 6th grade. And your typical 6th grader, if they're following the recommended schedule, is being exposed to upwards of 70 vaccinations in that time frame. And if you chart the increase in vaccination versus the incidence of chronic diseases like asthma, allergies, what you would see is a positive trend. So ultimately what we're seeing is the trading of acute natural childhood illness and exposure for more chronic long-term immune issues like asthma, allergies. When it comes to the hygiene hypothesis, we live in an age of sterilization with the hand sanitizers, the Lysol sprays, the Clorox wipes, all these things that we're doing to kill the germs, kill the bugs, kill 99.9% of the bacteria. And by doing so, we're limiting our exposure to these things that can help prime and develop a healthy, robust immune system versus an environment where we are going to encounter microbes. And the long-term consequences of this is overall, we see a rising incidence in chronic issues like asthma and allergies. So we have all these precursors setting up the perfect storm that when a person is exposed to various stressors, their immune system has this hyperactive, exaggerated response that we call allergies. And some of these stressors include things like toxins. Big example there, smoke, nicotine, allergens, things like pet dander, dust mites, ragweed. These are like the seasonal allergy type things, the pollens. And then there's dietary links, which there are extreme cases of people who have food sensitivities like shellfish or nut allergies. But a lot of times the diets that we eat as typical Americans lead us in a pro-inflammatory state that has our immune system more likely to have an exaggerated response. So I'm talking about your white flour, your white sugar, your highly refined carbohydrates. A lot of the diet styles that we follow as Americans in modern society that is pro-inflammatory. And then I want to explore the neurological concepts of why people can get into this state of being so prone to having this hypersensitive reaction to normal environmental things. So, chiropractic 101. Ultimately, your body is controlled by your brain and your nervous system. Your brain is in constant communication with all the organs and organ systems of your body, and that communication flows down through the spinal cord and through the nerves. And it's this beautiful two-way process that when everything is working optimally like it's supposed to, everything works fine and functions like it was designed to. Now, your spinal cord is protected by your spine. All these individual vertebrae, solid rings of hard bone, because your intelligent body intuitively wants to protect its most vital assets, i.e. the brain and the nervous system with its hardest substance. We have all these bones that house and protect our spinal cord. And these bones can get misaligned. This is the subluxation process. We have that joint misalignment, which causes local soft tissue damage and inflammation and nerve irritation at the site of that misalignment and damage. This leads your body, your brain wants to protect it, so it starts tightening up the muscles, trying to splint and guard it. And as we start to guard and splint, we get joint fixation, where now that joint is not only misaligned, it's stuck like that. And this produces a stress response, a hormone response. One of those hormones is cortisol. Heightened levels of cortisol ultimately put us in a pro-inflammatory state, which alters our immune function and makes us more prone to experience these atopic syndromes like allergies, asthma, eczema. Allergies, so your hyperactive response to pet dander, ragweed, pollen, dust mites, things like that. A lot of times we find issues up in the C2 area, up around the brainstem, which is kind of the control center of the nervous system, and also down towards the C6, C7. Now, these segments aren't necessarily a cookie cutter recipe as far as, oh, you have seasonal allergies, we know we're going to adjust C6, C7 on you. But these areas are heavily involved with your body's production of histamine, which we've all heard of, antihistamines that we take to cut down on our body's allergic response to something. Histamine is a natural process of the immune system that develops that excessive mucus buildup and those symptoms we get when we're having an allergic attack. Asthma. This is becoming such a growing trend. We see more and more children affected by this condition. Whereas once upon a time, I can remember back when I was a child growing up, we always had like that one kid in class who had their asthma inhaler. We're seeing this on almost epidemic proportions these days. And the areas of the spine that most directly influence that were, again, that upper cervical spine, C1, C2 area for surrounding the brainstem. As we get down through the mid-back area, T5 to 9, which has a strong influence on the sympathetic and the adrenal response. And then as we get down towards the bottom, which affects things like bowels, bladder, constipation. And then we have eczema, typically characterized by skin rashes and the areas you can see here on the diagram. The typical areas of the spine that we see irritation on the nervous system via misalignment of these vertebrae are, as we get down to the lower neck and upper back, C6 through T3, down towards a transition between low mid-back and upper lower back, and then again down at the bottom of the spine towards the sacral area. So what causes our spine to subluxate? It really boils down to one word: stress. And the three major forms of stress: thoughts, traumas, and toxins. So bad habits are a form of trauma. When we think trauma, a lot of times we think of big macro traumas like your car accidents, your slip fall injuries, sports injuries, that kind of thing. But really the more insidious and overlying culprit is a lot of the micro traumas, the bad habits, the postures that we see depicted here in many of these diagrams that many of us do day in, day out without even acknowledging that what we are doing is having a detrimental effect on our spine and our well-being. And in our office, our approach to correcting subluxation is always the three-legged stool approach. Our first emphasis is adjustments in rhythm. As we get a segment that's misaligned, especially an older subluxation, a lot of times we don't start feeling the effects of these subluxations until they've been existing for a long time. That's where your adjustments in rhythm come in. And those adjustments build on each other. So as we get something adjusted, if it's been used to being misaligned and your body's gradually adapted incorrectly to this incorrect posture, we want to reinforce that corrective change by delivering these adjustments in a series. And then we have to first identify, then modify and break the bad habits. And some bad habits are easier to identify and eliminate. Some bad habits are completely impossible via the responsibilities we have as far as work or whatever. And the best we can do is try to mitigate the detrimental effect these bad habits have on our overall well-being. But breaking and modifying the bad habits is a crucial leg of the stool. And then we have the exercise component, stretches and exercises. All the practice members in our office undergo a series of stretches and exercises to help re-educate and rehabilitate the muscular component as we get the alignment corrected to hold these realigned bones in the proper position. As I mentioned earlier, the majority of subluxations are present before we have any kind of body signals or symptoms to indicate to an individual that something's not quite right. And honestly, a lot of our issues start back when we're children. Think all the way back to the birth process. that is a trauma on the child's body, because priority one isn't protecting the newborn spine. It is getting the baby out of the womb so it will be alive. And that's when we often see a lot of the first traumas to the spine that lead to subluxation that can affect development. But then think back to when you were a kid and all the things you were doing as you were growing up, learning how to crawl, learning how to walk, bumping into things, falling down. All these can be early precursors to cause subluxation that will affect how your body develops. So the million-dollar question is, if you can't feel, if you don't have any body signals indicating to you that you have a subluxation, how do you know that you're subluxated? And the simple answer is you have to get checked. And that is why we promote in our office getting the people you care about checked, because the majority of people are walking around subluxated without even realizing it and without exhibiting any outward symptoms. And that is the most important time to detect and correct these misalignments, because that's before they start to cause detrimental effects to our health and our development. Whenever a new individual or family comes to our office, we treat their initial encounter the same with a few variations depending on what that person might be presenting with. There's always a consultation with one of the doctors where we sit down and establish what are our health concerns, what are our health goals. The consultation is followed immediately by a thorough chiropractic examination. We'll analyze posture, because posture is an overall window into the integrity and health of the spine. And we will palpate, we will feel along the spine for any of these misaligned subluxated segments. We also do a thorough set of scans in our office, and the scans give us an idea of how overall the nervous system is adapting to stressors, how the nerves that control the function of the organs, glands, and blood vessels, i.e. the nerves that cannot tell your brain, ouch, I hurt, and how the nerves that control the muscles that help to support and move the spine properly are all functioning. And these are scans that were certified by NASA to help us figure out where the sources of nerve irritation are and what the best solutions to any individual's issues are. And in most cases, with a few exceptions aside, for instance, young children, we typically don't take x-rays, or pregnant mothers, we don't typically take x-rays, but most people will get a series of pictures of their spine so we can actually see what's going on there. And all of this information is gathered to help give you the most specific and proper corrective techniques to give you long-term correction to improve your health for the rest of your life. And if you think about that from the perspective of getting children checked, we see 40% of our practice members are children, because when their parents understand that a lot of their problems started back when they're younger and they want to give their children every advantage in life, why wouldn't they get their children checked and get these problems corrected before they become more permanent, lasting problems? So my challenge to you is, if you are an existing practice member and you have anybody that you care about that has not been checked, talk to them, show them this video. Even if they're not necessarily experiencing allergies, get them in to get a consultation today. The only way we can find that we have subluxation in the majority of cases is to get checked. Just like when you go to the dentist to get your teeth checked every 6 months, you should be getting your spine checked regularly, because your nervous system is the master system that controls everything. And if you know anybody that is suffering from allergies, asthma, or these atopic syndromes, definitely forward this information to them so they can learn from it, because unfortunately a lot of people don't realize the true benefit that chiropractic has to offer for potentially everybody. I hope you enjoyed this webinar, and I hope you learned something today, and we would appreciate it if you share this information with anybody you care about. Click the like button, click the share button, and if you ever have any questions, feel free to give the office a call or talk to one of the doctors, because our mission at Full Potential Chiropractic is to serve and adjust the families of our community to achieve optimal health and empowered living. And we do this by educating, inspiring, and acknowledging the true potential in everybody. And our promise is to be disciplined and consistent in our vision to make the community and world a better place.